Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And very welcome to Uppsala University.
Wait, Ola, would you mind? We are highly technology.
Oh, it's for the movie.
High technology, yes, for the movie.
Hello, everyone. And welcome to Uppsala University campus Gotland and to this seminar or conference about guiding. My name is Ole Jansson, and I'm the senior advisor to the vice chancellor at Uppsala University, and that means that I am responsible for all the activities here at campus Gotland. So, to put it easier, I used to call myself head of campus Gotland in a way. But campus Gotland is a place, it's not an organizational unit, it's a place where the departments from Uppsala University have activities. And it's my job to coordinate that. Campus Gotland is a small-scale part of Uppsala University with ambitions to develop multidisciplinary activities, to work across the borders of the different fields of the university. And one of the most lovely, in a way, examples on this ambition to work multidisciplinary is this program, sustainable tourism or sustainable destination development, or what we shall call it, with a lot of different tracks and perspectives on tourism and visiting. And today and tomorrow you're going to talk about guides. And we have a lot of different tracks in the whole program. And we're starting next year a master program in sustainable destination development. And we have a lot of cooperation with the local society here as well, with perspectives on tourism. So I just here to say welcome. I'm joining you in the afternoon, but now I have to go to another meeting. So nice to see you here, and I hope you're going to have a nice couple of days here with Concilio and Ove. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, a few words more on this program that we are running. It is a program, we call it Sustainable Visits. It's really tricky to do it in English. In Swedish it's hållbara besök, which means more, it means a little more things. But so, Sustainable Visits. It is a program started 3.5 years ago, sitting in a room facing in the same direction over there, because over there you can see the new cruising pier, which will be open in April. And 3.5 years ago we thought, we were thinking about what will actually happen when we bring in a lot more cruising tourists here, cruise ships tourists here, when we are already increasing the tourism a lot. In 20 years, the number of guests in this island has doubled, and it is going up always. And the same thing is happening all over the world. So we thought this is a local phenomenon with a new local new cruise pier here, but it's a worldwide phenomenon. So this is a grand chance for us, a beautiful chance for us to do local studies globally and global studies locally. So that was one starting point, to use this island and this city as the case, as one of the cases, but to do in-depth studies and then go about it globally in global terms. So we founded a program and recruited researchers among us here. It's based on mainly based in Campus Gotland, and simultaneously with this here now today is another seminar with other parts of the program. The research program. It is a research program, and it's also a program for cooperation with other faculties of course, in universities, but also within the local government and the local civil society. And we have guests here from the museum and from guides, and there will be more coming in. So it's a very, this collaboration part is important, and also education. So as we heard in August, we'll start a new master program, in international master program, with 60 students in 3 different three different, what do you call it? Well, directions, yes. And this will start as one of the results of this program. The program consists now of, the research part is 28 to maybe 30 today, researchers that are involved in somehow involved. Many of us are not as a main part of our work, of course, because we teach also and do many things, but around 30, but from 11 different institutions, from technology to natural sciences, social sciences, humanities. So it's a multidisciplinary thing. And the reason what I want to stress here is that we actually don't talk too much about tourism in the it's really much about tourism, it's not that. But the idea with that word besök or visits is that there are so many visitors of so many kinds coming in, and they often they go well together. Sometimes they compete. They're sometimes not compatible at all, which happened only a few years ago here in this island when we had rather many refugees, asylum seekers came, and they were housed in the same type of facilities, or actually the same facilities that were built for tourists. So when tourists came, they had to leave. So in some ways, these many people coming and going, we live now in a time of massive migration worldwide. And tourism is a big part of it, but it's not all. It's also the refugees, and also and many other people, workers, travelers going on. So we try to look at it in the broader sense of visits. So how do this massive migration affect a place like this? And what are the consequences? What are the fortunes and what we can win from it, and what can we lose, and so on? There are many problems and many good things about it. And this is the big frame. So you're part of this, and we are very happy that you are a part of this all here, part of this program, which will last, hopefully, we have scheduled it for at least 10 years and maybe more. So it's a long-term obligation, since, of course, our world is a long-time obligation. So we have to address the problems of the world in a long-time perspective. So with this, I will hand over to Consuelen and wish you very welcome to this. I hope will be fruitful days thinking and talking about guides and involving guides and also researchers. And mind you, I will now also say to the people here, our guests here, that are not our researchers, this is a part of a research program. We need to speak like in university language. So if you're not accustomed to that, you must, please listen. And sometimes we might speak in an academic way, but nevertheless, that's why we're here. So everybody, be welcome. Don't let it frighten you. Oh.
The instrument of power here. So if it applies to me somewhere. Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Consuelo Grigio. I'm a researcher here. I'm a social anthropologist. And I've been conducting research with tour guides now for 2 summers, 2016 and 17. So I'm writing the article which will be published next year. And I welcome you to the island of Gotland. Most of you are local, so I don't have to welcome you. But for our guests and from people from the mainland, welcome to Gotland. So the idea for this symposium or seminar came actually after I presented my research in Roskilde, the 5th International Forum on Touring Guides, where I met Jane, Dineke, Inga, Ryder. Okay, so it's a recycling of people, and Hans I already knew earlier. So I presented my research there in Roskilde in Denmark. So this idea came out of this commitment and this, exchange of ideas and discussions that we had in March in Roskilde. So I just let you know what's going to happen in the next 2 days. So we have Jane which will start, the dances in a way, and then we'll have Ryder, and then we have a coffee break, or in Swedish fika, which is in a tradition. You are not allowed to leave for fika because it's a communal moment here in Sweden. And then we continue with another presentation. At the end of the third presentation, we are going to have a panel discussion, which means that our presenters will be sitting here, and we are allowed to ask questions, comments, wherever you need to, get out. They will be here available for your convenience. I think it's a nice opportunity. We continue in the afternoon with starting with Uwe and his presentation. So we'll have 2 presentations in the afternoon after lunch, and you have the program here. So we come back after lunch at 1 p.m. We reconvene here. We have 2 presentation panel discussion where you are allowed to ask anything. So we expect almost anything. Yeah, we expect questions to flood from your mouth and brains. And then we have a tour of Visby, which is free. It's going to be in English, and it will last 1 hour, 30 minutes. So for the tour, which will start at 3 p.m., we meet in the library, Almedalens Public Library, and then we go and we discover actually Visby in a nice way. We reconvene tomorrow. Here, same room at 10 a.m. So you'll have, time to sleep tomorrow. Today is going to be, a busy day, but tomorrow is going to be more relaxing. With 2 more presentations, Noel from Belgium and Hansi here from Sweden. And then we have a panel discussion with Ove, and then we wrap it up with conclusion and what are we going to do from here? What's going to be the future of our research, of our engagement in the community? So if you have any questions, just ask me, Ove or Karina, so we are responsible for this meeting. But I hope it's going to be a very, very successful meeting. So new ideas, new innovative ideas, also sustainable ideas for the future. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you Jane. Jane Widtfeldt Meged is Associate Professor in the Department of People and Technology Tourists at Roskilde University in Denmark. And she's coordinator of the Guide Diploma program. Very nice program, I love it. Her research interests are tourism, performance, experience, and shared community. Well, I give you the instrumental power. I pass it to you. Thank you very much. So, where I can place this one here. I'll put this one here. So is that okay? Oh, nobody's checking up there. Okay. So thank you, and thank you for bringing me here, Consuela. I'm very honored, and I think it's so great to see the people from our conference. It's a great opportunity to discuss this again. First of all, I'll just say 2 words about myself. I've been a certified guide in Copenhagen in Italian and English since 1984. So I've been working with guiding and tourism forever. And then for the last 15 years, I've been teaching the guides at Roskilde University, which are the Copenhagen guides that we see here. So these are the colleagues of the Gotland guides in Copenhagen. And I have put my headline saying tour guides from casual laborers to lifestyle entrepreneurs and innovators. And it is building on my last 3 research projects that I'm trying to merge together. So it's going to be a tour de force in 30 minutes on 3 research projects. And I was thinking, what is the agenda? What is it that I want to say? I want to say, what can guides, what can an education, and what can research really do to further the course, the good course of the certified guides. So I must say that my heart is closest to the certified guides, which will be made clear later.
After my PhD, I continued. I made a PhD on the co-production of guided tours. How do guides and tourists interact and co-produce the performance? Out of that came a whole book. But while doing it, I was really looking at myself a second time, and my guy said, how should you really explain why they want to do this work? Because there's so much hardship in it, and it's low paid, and it's working unearthly hours, and you get cancelled. And as I said, it could be really good to go in to see why do they want to do this work. And that was my first research project after my PhD, which I'll present for you in brief. Then from there I moved on to free guided walking tours, because while doing this research project, out in the horizon I spotted these new guides who worked without salary, just for tips. I said, what is this? And I followed them, and I got into it, and actually they became the topic of my research for a couple of years, where I've been following these free guided walking tours, and I've been studying them also as a business model, which has made me move into the collaborative economy in the tourism as my next research area. And then I will wrap up with my last research project, where I'm a project manager, where the guides has a central position. So that is what I'm going to talk about. Well, how do certified guides craft meaning in a precarious working life? The precariousness is that, and everybody knows, the Work About guides know they have a precarious working life. They never know how much they're going to work next year. In Copenhagen, they get booked, then they get cancelled, and it is like jumping from stone to stone. And you don't know how much you earn next year. So my take on it was not to make an objective study of how do they really manage to make an outcome? How do they live? What are their income? Like quantitative studies and so on. No, I wanted to go into the heads of the guides and ask themselves how they make sense of their own work. So that's why I took on a theory called job crafting, which say what is on the table of the person, him, herself, to make meaning of their work. What can you do yourself? How can you perceive your own job? Do you perceive yourself as a mere cleaner in the hospital? Or do you perceive yourself as a person who helped curing people? That you are in a team with doctors and nurses, and your work is indispensable, you have to be there, and together you cure people. So it's what is in your head, how you look on yourself. How do the guides look at themselves? What are their own perception of themselves? And what can they do to make meaning onto their job? And they can do that by crafting, by doing something with the relationships that are in their jobs, and they can do it with the tasks that are in their jobs. And I'll come back to that later. But that is like going inside and trying to put on the positive side mostly and see how they make meaning of it. I also wanted to take a little bit more critical take on it, and I was looking at a Swede called Garsten, who has been looking into what she called workplace vagabonds, where she says like that and she was looking at what are they called? The people that are sitting in agency and who are called into jobs on daily basis. Then they go here, then they go there. What are they called? I can't remember. But it's like the guides, the same kind of job. People who are having that kind of job. She said, what may be argued as a label as freedom of choice and positive loaded buzzwords like flexibility, lifelong learning, and entrepreneurship, which are the words you put on these kind of labels, she says, may in fact cover a not all that voluntary adaptation to still stronger market forces and the adaptation to individualized and internalized, leaving the employees in an isolated, fragmented, and competitive work life. So she said, they might present themselves as positive, but in reality, they are just doing it because they have to, and they might feel these words saying here. So I was trying to see, can I see some of this in the guide's working life as well? So also having a critical take on it. And I chose to interview guides from Copenhagen, Italy, and France, also to make a national comparison. And what came out of it was that the guides were mainly driven by what we say intrinsic motives. Is they didn't do it for money, they didn't do it for having a career track, they didn't do it for outwards things, they did it because they had something inside themselves. They felt they were good people's persons, they felt they were good leaders, They felt they had a lot of knowledge. They liked to apply their languages, their skills. They loved history, and they had a lot of things inside them that they wanted both to come out and live out, but also to engage in a lifelong learning. And so they were expressing themselves, and often they didn't really emphasize a hard school, because the tourist guide diploma program in Copenhagen, like I think in most places in the world, are quite severe and quite tough. But they were not saying, thanks to the diploma program, I became a good guide. They kind of thought that they had the qualities inside themselves prior to entering the program, and that was these internal qualities that came out in their work. So they were kind of expressing, it was a self-expression in their work. And some put it even that way, it's a modified gene. So you're kind of born to be guide. It's not something you can really learn. You cannot go to, if you don't have it in you, you cannot learn it. That was some of the conclusions that some of the people said. When they had to explain what they got out of the job, it was very much the way they crafted relations to the tourists. They got so much out of being with people, giving to people, and some of them would take it a step further and be quite overt in explaining how they, for example, somebody working with Germans would say that in the beginning she had difficulties addressing issues from Second World War. And she even went to Germany, to Berlin, to study for a couple of months to get under the skin of the Germans, to understand how do you address these sensitive issues. And then she found out, important things of what to do. You can talk about Nazis. Don't ever talk about Germans. Talk about the Nazis. That's how they do it themselves in Germany. So, and then she came back and she was able to better address these sensitive issues. And she felt empowered. And she also felt that she was in a position where she could also, not only her own, but also the view of the guest. So she was actually doing something more than just interpreting local heritage. She was trying to alter the world view of her own guests. And so you could see that many of the guides, they crafted social or other objectives with the guest, and they put a lot of meaning and a lot of feeling into the relationship with their guests. Then the guides also had a lot of invisible work. I mean, they had to really make themselves employable in front of the employees. So what they did was they would take on a lot of extra workloads that they were never paid for. They could be phoned up by people saying, we want to go here and there. And then they would say, but there's no time for that. Okay, what do you suggest? And then they would assume the role of tour operators, for example. Or they would, in preparation for tours, they could spend hours and days and weeks in preparing themselves unpaid. They would nurture the relationship with the employees and so on. So all put together, we could count off many hours and a lot of hard work they put into it just to get this 3 hours tours they got paid for. So a lot of job crafting to create their own job opportunities, engaging in the wintertime, taking new courses, learning new things all the time. So they really engage in lifelong learning. And all of it just to make themselves employable. And then finally, a very important part of it was also the relationship with their colleagues. And that was really dual, because on one hand, of course, the relationship with colleagues was very important, and it was impossible, they explained how it's impossible to survive without, but they also felt isolated, and they also felt the competition. And I got some pretty cruel stories from real life guides, how they can treat each other. In my article, which is in the Scandinavian Journal of Tourism and Hospitality, so if you want to read it, you can do it. But it was especially the newcomers that complained of how they were approached by the older guides and so on. The worst history comes from Italy, where the old guides would put on the police to the new ones and treat them as if they were intruders, trespassers, criminals and so on, yelling, shouting, cutting them off the roads for them and so on. Doesn't happen like that in Scandinavia, but my young guides would tell that we are treated like, and it is of course because of the situation that they are colleagues, but also competitors. The outcome from the whole study was that the guides proved to be ardent job crafters, and they sustain an identity as entrepreneurial, self-employed, rather than casual laborers. So they don't see themselves as casual laborers. They see themselves as entrepreneurial and self-employed, you know, and they're proud of what they're doing. And then, of course, there were some differences that for the full-time guides, that could really result in severe stress symptoms by the end of the season. It is very tough to sustain a full-time working life in this business here. Part-time guys, they do better and they choose and pick as they can best. Organizational setup means a lot. Guides in Italy were better protected than the Danish guides because they're also pressurized on tariffs, for example. I mean, the employees will try to discuss tariffs. You have an official tariff, but still the same. They'll say, can't you do it a little bit cheaper? And that is easier to do if it doesn't go through an organization, if it's the individual who has to discuss his own tariff. But while in Italy they have got a setup that where the guides are protected behind an organization that deals with the client. So here you pay the tariffs or you don't get in. And seniority, as I said, the conflict lines would go between young and old, and I could not really find other differences between the nationalities, so to say, between the guides in Denmark, France and Italy. So the outcome of my first research could be, now let's try to have a stronger union. Let's try to stick together and fight for our rights, make the employees treat us right, make sure that we get our salary as we are supposed to, and so on. But just in the few years I was making that study, a new reality was kind of catching up on me and all the guides from behind. And the game changes because if we see here the cruise industry in Copenhagen, from 2002 to 12, it has grown by 4 times, and we now have close to 1 million cruise passengers coming into Copenhagen. And on the worst days in Copenhagen, we are a little bit above the limit of what the city can take. We have also had a general increase in the overnight stay just within a period of 7 years. So in Copenhagen, tourism really is booming. And you could expect, oh, that's really good for the guides, a lot of work to them. But what has happened, especially because of the cruise industry, is that the demand of guides exceeds supply. On the days that a cruise ship come in with 5,000 passengers from Italy, and they need 40 guides in Italian, and I've got 20 guides on the list. So what do? They import guides from Southern Europe, and we know that unemployment rate in Southern Europe is extremely high. So they import loads, and we talk loads of young people from the Southern European countries, and they give them a crash course on 14 days, and they pay them half the tariff of the local guides. And then what happens is that some of the agencies, they will still try to make sure they employ the certified guides first, and then there's what we call guide lights. But what happens is that they invest in bringing up these young people. They give them this 14 days course. So to make sure that they stay for the season, they also give them jobs when there were labor available from the certified guides. So it appears that this sudden increase in demand of guides has been like a gateway that just wide open the doors for guide lights. And of course, that brings us into a discussion about social dumping that I'm not going to go into, but that's of course what we could say was going on here and what is going on in many jobs that we see in Northern Europe at the moment. Parallel with this development here, in 2012, Sandeman arrived to Copenhagen that you might have heard of, and you know them, and you know that concept that you go on a tour and you just have to give a tip if you like the tour. Otherwise, it's for free. And when I saw that first time, I said, what? So I just jumped on the first tour and followed to see what is going on here. And I followed them since 2013, and in that period, they have gone from when they started in the autumn, they would have 5-10 guests. In the first summer, they would have, when it was really heavy, 60 guests on a departure from in front of the City Hall Square. Now they have 600 daily, each. I mean, we are talking massive. When I interviewed Copenhagen Free Walking Tours, I have got good connection with the guides and the founders there. They're expected to handle 100,000 guests in Copenhagen this year, 2017. And they employ around 25 guides. So this is another thing. And then finally, if we talk about securing the rights of the guides, in general we are in a period of deregulation and liberalization within the EU. So even the guides who had more rights than we ever had, because we're not a protected trade in Copenhagen, anybody can call themselves guides, anybody can go in and do the work. In Southern Europe, they have been more protected, but even down there, they have to give up. In Italy, for example, now, if you're a certified guide, you can go down there and work for a month in all the cities. You couldn't do that before, but that is the EU who's going in for. So the time is not with us if we want to protect ourselves more. So what could we do? I mean, in a way, I can say that both the Tourist Guide Diploma program and the Tourist Guide Association in Copenhagen, they're a little bit paralyzed of this situation here. And they're a little bit like, like what to do. And there's a lot of pessimism and a lot of, like what, but instead of, as I said, we're saying then to eat a crying cracker, tudekicks, we say, let's say, what can we do instead? First, I think, the first thing to do is know your enemy. I'm not calling a free guided tour just enemies. I really like these guys. I mean, they're good guys when that is the case, isn't it? Always. If you really get to know people and understand them from the inside, they're not like bad guy. They're working, then it's not prohibited to do what they do. If they paid the tax, of course, the tax is always the problem about do they pay tax from it. But if we take that away, they have just made up a brilliant business model. This is rather complex, and I'm not expecting you to just understand it like this, but what I've been doing together with a Swedish colleague, Malin Sillinger from Lund University, is that from a network perspective, we're trying to see, 10 minutes, we have been trying to see what kind of innovation is this free guided walking tours. And what we can see is that with having all the bookings, all the marketing done by computer generated, so the participants are putting in all the input. I mean, we are having these trust mechanisms where the user-generated content, it's all the clients who are going in and saying, this was a very good thing. And so social medias, the customers and the companies work online for free and make all the marketing and as a selling platform at no cost, almost no cost. Here we have a huge network of guides who are ready to work on these conditions, say, all I earn are the tips. And in fact, they have more money in their pocket than my own guides. Even with the tariffs, but if you deduct the tax and you look at what these guys have got in their pocket, they will have something around between 1,000 and 1,500 kroner. That will be like 150 to 200 euros in their pocket after each tour, on average. That's what they tell themselves. And then for each guest, they will pay back 5 kroner, which would be like 70 cents. I mean, but you're into kroner also, so they give 5 kroner back for each client. This kroner go back to run this minimum cost. They have the same to make the umbrellas or little flyers and so on. But everybody's working without salary. Everybody feels that they own it, not in the Sandeman. Sandeman has got a platform ownership. That means Sandeman himself owns it and he controls it from Berlin. So when they pay back 10 kroner or 5 kroner, that is going up and down, it goes to Sandeman. And then they keep the rest themselves. But there's an enormous amount of people who are ready to work this way up here. Then what happened is in Copenhagen that a second company, which were the ones I was following, Copenhagen Free Walking Tours, they founded their own company where they built everything up from the bottom without anybody asking a penny. As everybody put in all the expertise, the knowledge into the company to build it up. Just to have the tours, all they would earn would be the tips from the tours. And in this way, slowly they built up this company that's now serving these 100,000 people. So what you can say is that the monetary or the money are a lot less important here, and what is important are ICT, as the network. You've got the ICT network and the social capital you got, and the way that people work together. And what I'm trying to say to my student is, you fight you fight each other. These people, they collaborate, they trust each other. They work for 2 or 3 years in this company without anything, waiting for the company to grow up and share what is over. So there are some important things about friendship and trust that are working within these networks that really explains what is going on. I'm not going to delve into it, I'm just saying it's important from outsiders to understand, also for the certified guides. So we have the market innovation with these new tours, and we got organizational innovation with Copenhagen Free Walking Tours, where everybody are owners of the company. And it's flexible, it can take in new and others can leave, and everybody feel that ownership to the company. So what can we do when all this is happening around us? Well, a lot of the guys have started their own companies. We say, okay, you become an entrepreneur yourself. Make up your own tours. Don't sit and wait. Don't let the other one run, drive the development. You have to be developed. You don't have to think of yourself as a laborer, somebody waiting for somebody to call you for a tour. Go out and make your tours. Find your niche. Find out what you're going to do. So this is just a little bit about all the Byvandring Nu, Red Badge Guide, Copenhagen Beer Wall, Danish Heritage Tours, Show Me Copenhagen, Copenhagen This Way, and then I didn't even put on the ones that are working also with green tourism, Green Insight and so on. So these are the guides, and we have a module for 5 ECTS in the Diploma program that enhance this concept. We don't have as a proper business model, but we seek a concept development of a new tour for a specific group. So we train our guides to think of themselves as somebody who potentially could work as entrepreneurs in the future. That brings me to my last research project, where we have got 6 million Danish kroner to develop tourism, urban ecotourism, in this nature park that is adjacent to Copenhagen. This is Copenhagen. It's actually inside Copenhagen. And over here, you've got a big national park that is close to the city of Roskilde. And we say, here we have got something unique. We can spread the tourists that are congested in the cities, pick up themes on ecotourism in general on many levels. And what can we do? What we can do. Now, this is, now the years have gone. This is actually 2017, and we have done this already. We've been working out in the parks, exploring and developing narratives, identities, and tourism infrastructures, and that has been done together with a company called Norrøn Architects. If you're interested in hearing about that, which is super interesting, I can tell you later. But I would rather go to the next step. That's 2018, next year. We have said the Tourist Guide Diploma program and the Forest School at Copenhagen University, they have to develop innovative tourism products. Plus, we have to develop educational module in urban ecotourism, changing tourism behavior and entrepreneurship. So this spring, we are going to make a course where our guides have been invited into the projects to develop new tourism products in the 2 parks, with the thoughts of that the tours by all means have to rest on the pillars of sustainability in the way they are conducted by, for example, taking the trams or the metro instead of the bus as far as it's possible, to maybe take an ordinary tour, but also bring them out into the park, talk about the green-blue corridors between the city, go and visit city gardens, the city bees, also talk about the green thing in the city and the city in the parks, connecting man and nature, and then it's up to them what they're going to do. We don't know. We have just promised to come out with a range of products and tours that are going to be tested within the period of this program. And then in the end, we have to develop a blueprint for urban ecotourism. And these are some of the very brilliant persons that I'm working with. We have about 20 people detected of tour guides and nature guides, and he's from a dancing company making guided tours with his concept of doing it blindfolded. And there are all kind of funny ideas here going on, but all brilliant people, certified guides who has got a lot of brain power and entrepreneurship, and who are going to develop the tours, and it's just some of them. And what I'm saying is that we talk very well into the overall policy. On the 2nd of August this year, it was Overshoot Day. Then we had consumed and depleted the resources of the world that can be regenerated in a year. So we use resources that would need 1.6 Earth planet Earth. In Denmark, we use 3.4. If everybody lived like the Danes and possibly also like the Swedes, we would need 3.4 planet Earth. So we are way out, all of us. So this is not just for the tourism. This is not just this one here. This is necessity. And these global sustainable development goals that have been adopted by the UN, now diffused all over the world, are really very important. And the UNWTO, they have said that tourism has to be very active in particularly 3 parameters: good jobs and economic growth, in responsible consumption, and life below water, because most of the destinations are along the coastal line. So these are the main areas that they have set for. And they say not only should we eliminate the footprint of tourism, no, it's the other way around. Tourism has to be a lever for sustainable growth. So we have to be a catalyst. We have to be the front runners. We sit with a golden opportunity to shape sustainability with tourism. And we could very well start with the guides. Thank you. Sådan. Huh? Yes.
Thank you very much, Jane. So just, if you have questions, it will be for later, just jot them down, write them down, save, download them. And now we have Reidar Mikletum. Thank you. Reidar is a professor emeritus at the University of, I give you the power, of Stavanger, and visiting professor at Molde University. He's working for me now. That's good. College and runs his own company. His research includes work-related issues such as work environment, stress and health and organizational leadership, but he has also been involved in research on tourism and especially event and festival management. He has worked for 6 years as the head of research at Roskilde Research Institute and was for 6 years the dean of the Norwegian School of Hotel Management. He has received a prize for research excellence by Roskilde Research Institute. Welcome, Reidar.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know all this, but...
Yeah, I made it up.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I'm a born guide. I love to take people out in towns and to do guiding. That's really when I like it most. But I don't go mainly into the town. I go into the nature. And that brings in another issue that we are going to talk about. It's a very broad concept. Second, I had an aunt. She was from Kristiansand, lovely town in Norway. And she did professional guiding. And she was a perfect guide. She loved to drink aquavit and was a very jolly person. She was really this kind of outgoing personality type. She was really the thing. And third, I've been researching guides in ecotourism in the Amazon. I've been writing about sustainability and the training of sustainability for the guides. And we discovered that the guides, across Europe, we can't say that guides really are trained in sustainability and sustainability principles over Europe. There are examples of good training, like Roskilde. They are doing a very good job, but the general impression is that this kind of sustainability issue is not really given to the guides. They have to discover it themselves, learn it from their interaction with society. And the good thing is that being a guide is a continuous learning, because you're always out there and learning something about the environment, and that makes it a perfect job. And that brings me to another interesting reflection before we start really. We had this mountaineer climbing mountains in Norway, Arne Næss. You might have heard about him. He died 98 years old, and he climbed up to the very last day of his life. So when he got a little bit old, like say up in his 90s, people asked him, "Why do you continue climbing?" And he answered, I'm not continuing climbing, it's you that stopped. And I think this is so kind of enlightening for the guiding. Guiding is maybe the prototype of what we should all do. When we listen now to Jane's speech here about this free life, why should we go to ordinary workplaces, follow schedules and so on? We can hop on, hop off. We can live as ordinary people, as real people, as really human beings. The freedom and being driven by an internal motivation. That's a fabulous thing. So this is something that I discovered now when you were talking, that as a retired professor, I am living that way now. I can do exactly what I like to do, and I feel very pleased and very honored to be invited here, and this is really something I like to do. So this was kind of reflections you kicked off in my brain now. So are we as guides contributing? Well, we can, but we are not necessarily doing that. We know definitely that we can share facts, and in fact there can be reason to develop a kind of a sustainability thinking. We can talk about how different activities interact, and it creates problems or it solves problems in the society. So we can understand the issues better, definitely. And then, moreover, we can contribute to a kind of a socio-cultural and also economic well-being. Like here in Gotland, now you have an increase in tourism. Definitely, you can contribute. You can do it in lots of ways, by producing your kind of reproducing culture with the visitors, and by paying your taxes and so on. This is kind of developing Gotland. Then it's important that you live and work in Gotland to develop the society. If you live in Spain and guide here, where is the tax going? That's kind of a big issue in tourism business. Where is the tax going in the end? Where is the surplus ending up? So that's a kind of a critical issue here, really. Let's see if it works. Now Jane talked about the ongoing changes, so I won't say very much about that. But there is a kind of this co-creation and the hunt for experiences, and maybe hunts for transformation. You should feel changed when you come back from a trip. That is what people aim at today. So that's a kind of a goal, and that's probably where we have to orient our activities, all of us, to survive here. And then we have a fabulous specialization going on. But honestly, we have not researched tourism guiding or tour guiding in Europe so much, and especially not in the north. Most of the studies on guiding, they have been done in the south. They've been done in South America and in Africa and Indonesia and so on, in exotic places, or places that are exotic in a different way compared to us, but the climate is warm. That is probably what attracts the researchers. So that is kind of an error. Maybe it's a good thing, because then we have been able to develop guiding without the support of research, so it has kind of grown up as a more natural business. Maybe that's so. And we don't know the history of guiding either in the north. I know from Norway that we have been the best guides were probably 200 years ago. People starting to take visitors into nature, and they earn much more on the guiding than they did on their farming and fishing. So that was a very important part of the growth of the tourism area, and it was the English mainly that kind of funded this first guides, and then later on also the Germans. So then we have all these kinds of alternative ways of guiding, which we are going to talk a little bit more about, I suppose, during the day. But there is also a very black side, a very kind of dark side to guiding. It can be guiding in dark aspects of the society, like underground or resistance movements and so on. How to sneak through the fence between Mexico and the United States, that can be done by a guide and so on. So there are lots of nice issues to look into, but also the business itself has some black sides, which we are going to talk about. There is also a globalization going on, And especially we see that Chinese tourists, they would love to come with their own guides. They don't trust us at all. And we discovered that we can't speak to them anyhow, so, so it won't work really. So we need Chinese guides with Chinese tourists. But that takes away some income from Gotland or from the house society. And we also discovered in Norway that the Chinese, they make agreements with shops where the guides then earns much money by bringing the visitors to certain shops. And of course they raise the prices, and the surplus is then paid to the guide. It does make money for the shop anyhow, so it's not unsustainable, but it's kind of a little bit marginal, ethically speaking. And then I think we will see more and more international, or I would say multinational companies doing guiding. And that will change the picture very dramatically, I would suppose. And there is definitely a ways of making easy money, as Jane talked about. But honestly, I liked that model. It was a good one, because you can go away with money in your pocket, and nobody knows how much you earn. And you can do this when you want to do it. And it's a kind of the good freedom that all human beings like to have. So to bring this a bit further, I would like to talk about two studies I've done on guiding, trying to understand better how we should kind of see the guide, and to the self-understanding of the guide, I would say. One study was in Catalonia in Spain, and you know the trouble now in Catalonia. They are very stubborn people, like the Norwegians, so this goes very well together. And but they had an organized guiding system where you have to be licensed to do guiding, while in Norway this is free and anybody can do guiding. So we try to identify now some quality aspects of their work and related to job satisfaction and stress and career plans, which are three important issues in working life. I would say ordinary working life, and also for the guides. So we don't think that anybody has studied this with the guides. I have presented this in psychological conferences, and they look at me and they have never heard about guides. So that's kind of very interesting. You have gone completely under the radar. You are absolutely not seen by researchers. So what are we talking about? Job satisfaction, that is to enjoy your work. Simple as that. So don't make it more complex. You just enjoy what you are doing. And the job stress, that is the kind of, it's not the opposite, because you can be stressed and enjoy work. But you have this kind of negative feeling, and in the long run it is kind of ruining your health and of course your motivation. So as a kind of a steady state, it's not a good situation. And careers here is seen as that kind of the prospect you have for your job in the future. It's also really kind of easy. Then we need to understand a job. We need to understand the job demands. And here we talk about physical and psychological, I would say, organizational aspects that kind of challenge you, that take your energy. That is what you need to meet to do your job properly. And there is a great literature on that in work psychology. And what we talk about here is quantitative demands, that is the amount of work. We try to measure that, and also decisions you must make, and learning demands. So that is kind of the demand side, that is kind of loading you. Role conflicts, that's a kind of the sound of it is not good. It looks like a bad word, and indeed it is. It is requirements on your job that are incompatible. So you are kind of torn between parts, and that's not an easy job to have. And ambiguity is also a problem, because then you don't know really what to do. It's a diffuse role. And one solution to that is what Jane said: you can craft your job, you can just make it. So that's a kind of the most sustainable solution to ambiguity when you don't know what to do. do it. So simple.